Hey guys, I'm Elijah Nam. I'm a Super AP in Dr. Neat's class, and I'll be making a few videos on Java here and there. And yeah, let's get into it.
Hey guys, today we're going to be learning about constructors and specifically adding a constructor with different parameters. Alright, so I'm going to go into our lab, right, and I'm going to create a new class, and this one's going to be, I'm just going to make this class called boxes, or not boxes, shape, and I'm going to start writing our class. So we already know how to create a class as you guys already did with your car class, right? Ignore this title for now. You guys will learn what that is later. But essentially what we're doing is we want to name the class, right? So we want to say public class and name it. And the name of your class has to be the same as your file name. So our file name is shape, right? So I'm going to name my class shape. And the two things, or the three things that we typically want in our class is one, private variables, two, constructors, and three, methods. Okay, so I'm gonna start with my private variables. Actually, before I do that, I'm gonna show what this class essentially does. It's very similar to your car class. Um, I'm just gonna make this class make a shape that looks like this, right, out of two rectangles, and then I'm just gonna add a simple draw method that prints out this rectangle, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Um, so yeah, so let's start with the private variables. So first, I'm gonna need two private variables for the number of rectangles that I need, right? So let's say private rectangle top box and private rectangle bottom box, right? And I also want to add one more thing. Here, I'm gonna open Paint again. Along with this top box, or along with this like L-shaped shape, I guess, I want to add like a label. So let's say my label was box, right? I want it to have the text box in within the shape, right? So along with these two private variables that I created, these two rectangles, I also want to create another private variable called text, or of the text class, and I'll name it label, right? So we have our private variables, and now we want to move on to our constructors. Remember, constructors, it's just the name of your constructor. You want it to be the same as your class name, right? So in this case, it's going to be public shape, right? And within these parentheses are the parameters that you want, right? So for now, I'm just going to put two parameters, double x and double y. And the purpose of these parameters is to pretty much give you the coordinates of where you want your rectangle, or where you want your L-shaped uh, shape in this case to be placed. So similar to like when you create a regular rectangle, right? So like let's say you have rectangle box and you say new rectangle 50, 50. Hold on, that's not right. 50, 50, 100, 100, right? The 50 here and the 50 here, these two represent the x and y coordinates of where your box will spawn. These two are separate parameters that determine the width and height of your rectangle, but that's not what we're really aiming for. So for now, I'm just going to define my private variables, right? So top box equals new rectangle, x, y, and let's just make this um, 50 by 100, right? So it's going to be 50 wide and 100 long. And then next we're going to define our bottom box, right, equals new rectangle. And if you guys see here, I'm going to open Paint again, right? Oh, whoops. Okay. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to open Paint again, right? And this is the shape that we want to go for. And if you guys look at this horizontal or vertical line, right? both of these boxes, their top left corners are at the same x coordinate. So it would make sense then for me to have, for this rectangle to spawn at x, or the same x coordinate, right? But if you look at the y coordinate of the upper left hand corner of these two boxes, right? You're gonna see that their y coordinates differ, right? This we set this upper left hand corner of our box to spawn at x, y, right? And therefore this corner we want it to spawn at x, y plus whatever the height is, right? And this right here would be the height. And in this case, we already defined what height is. We said height is 100. So we're going to say y plus 100, right? And then we could determine whatever we want the height and width to be. Right? So I'm just going to make the width 150 and the height 50, right? And I also want to create the label. So, or define our text variable, right? I'm just gonna make the text within the box, so it's gonna spawn like around here, right? I'm just gonna say like box, right? That's gonna be our label. So I'm gonna say label equals new text, and then you want to define where you want it to be. You want your text to be placed, right? So you're gonna say x, y, and a string variable or a string parameter for whatever you want it to say. So in this case, I'm just gonna say box. Right. All right. So we have. Okay, that's not what I wanted to do. So we have our private variables, right? Those are done, and we also have our constructors. That's also done. So now we want to create our method, right? So for now, I'm just gonna add a simple method. You guys already know the draw method, right? So public void draw. And again, the reason why this is void instead of like int or like string, etc., right? It's because this doesn't really give you an output. It doesn't return any value, right? It's simply going to draw your rectangle, right? Or in this case, my L-shaped shape, right? It's not going to return any integer, string, or anything like that. I'm just going to minimize this for now. So I'm just going to say when I say draw for this specific class, I want all of these things to be drawn, right? So I'm gonna say top box dot draw. I didn't spell that right. Bottom box dot draw and label dot draw. All right. So make sure to control save. And now I'm gonna go to my. Oh, whoops. I should probably delete this. I'm gonna go to my starter.java, right? So if you go back to your file and then go to your starter.java, it's this, right? And I'm gonna create a shape object, right? That we just created with this class. So I'm gonna say shape, and I don't know. Let's call our shape object Vikram equals new shape, and we have to use the constructor, right? With its two parameters. Right, so we're gonna give it the x and y coordinates of where we want our L-shaped shape to pretty much spawn. So we're gonna say let's just do 50 by 50, right? And we also want it to be shown in our canvas. So I'm gonna just save real quick, and then we're gonna compile, and we're gonna run, right? And as you can see, it looks fairly similar to what I wrote here. It's an L-shaped shape with our up top box right here, our lower box, and our label, right? So let's say, all right. So for now, the only thing we can change is the placement of our rectangle, right? When we create it. So like, if we were to create another shape object called, I don't know, Tony equals new shape 100 by 100, and we were to draw this shape, right? We would, move it over here. I mean, it looks a bit confusing because the shapes are overlapping, but you get the general idea, right? We can only change the placement of our boxes, right? Or not boxes, shapes. So what if we wanted to do something different, right? What if we wanted to add an option of, where we can change the label, right? So for now, whenever we create a shape object with this constructor, right? We see that label is always gonna have the string string box, right? Our label is always gonna say box. The only thing we can really change when constructing our object is where it's spawned. So what we want to do is we want to somehow um, add a way for us to change this, right? So the easiest way to change this would to add another parameter to our constructor, right? And use that parameter as this, our string parameter that's required to make a text object, right? So we're going to create another constructor, right, of the shape class, and it's going to say double x, double y, right? But we're also going to say, we're also going to require a string object as a parameter. So let's just say name, right? And this constructor is going to do the exact same thing as our first constructor, right? Top box is going to be defined, and bottom box is going to be defined. But we want what the label says essentially to be customizable, all right? So the same thing, define both bottom and top box. Oh, hold on, that's not right. Okay, and we're gonna define our private variable label, right? Not as not the correct class. Okay, text, right? And we want it to still spawn at the same place that all of these things spawn. And instead of saying box, right? Because if we write the same exact thing as our previous constructor, right, there is no point of this parameter. This parameter that we just added to our second constructor does nothing, as it's not really, this object is not, or this variable is not used in this code, right? And even if we did use this constructor, right, our shape object will still have the same label with the name box, right? So instead of box, we want to use this string object that we just created, or that the user inputs, right? So we're gonna put it here, right? And what this means is our text object, known as label, spawns at x, right, and y, and then also whatever the label or whatever string that we decide to create this object with is what the box is going to be named, right? So if you look here, let's change shape Tony, right? So shape Tony equals new shape, and let's move this somewhere else. Let's do like 200 by 200, right? And I almost forgot the third parameter, but let's label this Tony, right? For simplicity, right? And we're gonna draw this object, right? We're gonna compile. Okay. So let's see what I did wrong. Constructor shape and class shape cannot be applied to given types. Require double double found into int string. Okay, so pretty much the why this errored is because when it was compiling, um, for all it knew, or it tried to use the constructor, the first constructor that I had, right? And not this second constructor. And basically, the reason that it did that was I didn't save. Make sure to press Control S. That's very important. But yeah, so why this didn't work when I didn't save was before I did my most recent save, right? This thing was essentially not there, right? It was basically, it's not there. It didn't exist, right? So with this, when I called a shape object, right, and used these three parameters, it wouldn't work because the constructor that I had for my shape class required um, two variables, right? Both of the double class. But here I gave a value, another value, and a string, right? So it wouldn't work. So now let's just make sure to save. Hold on. Let me uncomment this. Save, right? Save this. Compile, and it should work, right? And run. Okay, so as you can see pretty clearly, we have our Vikram shape, right? With just the normal label box, right? And we have our Tony shape with our new Tony label, right? And that's pretty much what you guys are going to be doing for your homework. So let's take a look at your homework for now. let me go to your T21 folder, and this is the lab you guys will be doing. You guys will make a car class, and let's look at the notes, or not make the car class, but you guys are going to go to your notes for this class, or this lab, right? And basically what I just did, you guys are going to add a second constructor to your car class that you guys made in the past like 10 labs, right? And you're going to want to make you guys are going to add a parameter to this constructor that allows you to customize the label of your car object, right? And if you don't already have the option of a label on your car class, then you guys are going to want to create a private variable of the text object, right? And you guys are going to want to define this within your constructors. Also, one more thing, the reason that shape Vikram works, and both of these hold on. The reason why both of these constructors work is, okay, what did I just do? Okay, yeah. So the reason that both of these constructors work is because they are different by their number of parameters, right? So normally you think like, oh, why doesn't this constructor that we just created use this block of code rather than this block of code? And that is all dependent on the number of parameters that we gave and the type of parameters. So for our Vikram variable, or our shape variable known as Vikram, we gave it 2 parameters, right? And they're both integer or double values, and they fit the requirement in our first constructor. For our second constructor, we require a double, and a string variable, right? And those are all provided here, here, and here. And yeah, that's basically all of today's lesson. Good luck on your lab.